Welcome to Middle East Briefing. The content of the briefing includes China to host talks with foreign ministers from Arab and Islamic countries. Price to pay, Iran and US wary of Israel-Gaza war's spillover impact. Gaza hospital is now a death zone, says UN. After visit. When it comes to the Israeli-led war on terror, follow the money. A split emerges as Biden struggles to deter attacks on US troops. China to host talks with foreign ministers from Arab and Islamic countries. South China Morning Post. A delegation of foreign ministers from Arab and Islamic countries will visit China to discuss finding a solution to the war in the Gaza Strip. The ministers from Palestine, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Indonesia, and the Organization of Islamic Cooperation will meet with Chinese officials on Monday and Tuesday. The visit is one of the most high-profile diplomatic efforts by Beijing since the conflict began. China and Arab countries share similar positions on Palestine issues, and Beijing has repeatedly called for an independent Palestine under the two-state solution. The announcement of the visit came just days after the Israel-Palestine conflict was discussed during talks between Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden. Price to pay, Iran and U.S. wary of Israel-Gaza war's spillover impact. South China Morning Post. Tensions between Israel and Iran are escalating, with a potential for the conflict to spread across the Middle East. While neither the US nor Iran wants to expand the conflict, there is a danger of escalation as each party seeks to maintain the edge in their tit-for-tat strikes. Israel has become increasingly engaged in cross-border fighting with Lebanese Hezbollah, an Iran-backed militant group. Israel's defense minister has threatened to unleash an aerial war on Lebanon, claiming that Hezbollah is dragging Lebanon into a war that may happen. Meanwhile, pro-Iranian militia groups have increased their attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, leading to the first lethal American responses against forces commanded by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. In addition to this, Yemen's rebel Houthi movement has unleashed several waves of medium-range ballistic missiles and explosives-laden drones on Israel. Iran's primary aim is to weaken the American position in the region, and it has been deploying its influence over Hamas, Hezbollah, and other militias to effectively tank the Saudi-American security accords and normalization with Israel. Iran hopes to pressure the Iraqi government to ask U.S. forces to leave, although it is unlikely to achieve this. While Iran has a degree of control over Lebanon and Iraq, and its proxies control much of Syria and Yemen, its strategic maneuvering will come at a high price, with Hamas likely to be removed from the Gaza Strip. Gaza hospital is now a death zone, says UN. After visit. Wall Street Journal. The United Nations has called the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza a death zone. The hospital is the largest in the Gaza Strip, and the UN has sent an inspection mission to investigate the conditions there. In a joint statement, the UN agencies leading the mission said 291 patients and 25 healthcare workers remain in the hospital after the Israeli military ordered the evacuation of some 2,500 people who were sheltering there. The UN says that patients and staff are terrified for their health and safety in a facility that is largely not functioning. The Israeli military has denied ordering the hospital's evacuation and says that hospital staff asked it to create an evacuation corridor for people able to leave. Israel has long alleged that Hamas uses Al-Shifa hospital as a key command center and has presented evidence of this. The UN says that it found signs of shelling and gunfire inside the hospital. In addition, the hospital has a mass grave at its entrance where more than 80 people were buried. The UN calls for an immediate ceasefire and the sustained flow of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. When it comes to the Israeli-led war on terror, follow the money. Al Jazeera. The author argues that the recent violence in Gaza is part of a larger war on terror being waged by Israel, similar to the U.S. response after September 11. The author points to the U.S. State Department's approval of a $320 million sale of guided bomb kits to Israel as evidence of the Biden administration's support for Israel's actions. The author also highlights the use of torture by Israeli forces and the increase in violence by Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank. The author argues that Israel's war on terror is not just about revenge, but also about expanding its arms industry and exporting its military and intelligence tools. Israel's use of artificial intelligence in combat is also criticized, as it has not been shown to reduce civilian casualties. The author concludes by stating that Israel's actions endanger both Palestinians and critical Jews, and that the Western world is supporting Israel's actions. A split emerges as Biden struggles to deter attacks on U.S. troops. Washington Post. The U.S. military in Syria and Iraq has been subject to daily attacks for the past month, with rockets and drones injuring scores of personnel. The U.S. has responded with 3 rounds of airstrikes, although these have not halted the attacks, which have been carried out by Iranian proxies. Iran is believed to have been unhappy with the US's support of Israel during the recent conflict with Gaza. The US is concerned that a wider conflict could be incited if it responds too forcefully. Israel-Gaza updates: premature babies evacuated from Al-Shifa and on their way to Egypt. ABC. The Palestinian Red Crescent has announced that 31 premature babies have been evacuated from Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza and will be transported to Egypt for treatment. This comes after Israeli forces entered the hospital compound and scores of critically injured patients were left stranded. The hospital had run out of fuel, shutting down incubators and other equipment, and food, water, and medical supplies had also run out. The World Health Organization assisted with the evacuation of the babies, while a WHO team reported that 291 patients, including trauma patients and those with spinal injuries, were still in the hospital. From the river to the sea, controversial Palestinian chant. Deutsche Welle. The slogan "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" has been banned by the German Interior Ministry, as it is seen as an indication of support for Hamas and a call for violence against Jews and Israel. The slogan is often chanted at pro-Palestinian demonstrations and has been the subject of considerable debate. Some activists for Palestinian rights interpret it as a call for peace and equality, while others see it as a call for the destruction of Israel. The slogan was first used by the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, in 1964 and has since been adopted by other Palestinian groups, including Hamas and the People's Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP. The German Interior Ministry's ban on the slogan follows similar controversies in other countries, including Austria and the United Kingdom, where demonstrations were banned and politicians were suspended for using the phrase. The debate over the slogan centers on whether it includes or excludes the Israeli people and whether it calls for equality or the conquest of Israel. For years, two men shuttled messages between Israel and Hamas. No longer. New York Times. Two men, Gershon Baskin and Ghazi Hamad, maintained a secret line of communication between Israel and Hamas for 17 years. As an Israeli peace activist and a senior Hamas official, the two men nurtured an informal back channel between officials in Jerusalem and Gaza, even during times of violence. However, their relationship suffered a falling out after Hamas conducted an attack on Israel on October 7, 2022. In a televised interview on October 24, Hamad justified the attack and called for more violence against Israel. Baskin, appalled by Hamad's change in stance, ended their relationship. Both men had previously discussed the possibility of a long-term truce or peace between Israel and Hamas, but that now seems impossible. The falling out between Baskin and Hamad highlights the increasingly entrenched positions of both sides in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the difficulty in finding a resolution. Inside West Bank district under lockdown since Hamas attack. BBC. The Israeli military is imposing a lockdown on Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank, and particularly in Hebron, where they are being forced to remain in their homes at gunpoint. For 40 days now, 11 Palestinian neighborhoods in Hebron have been subject to one of the harshest lockdowns imposed on the area for over 20 years, making it impossible for Palestinians to go to work or school. The Israeli military claims this is being done in order to provide security to all residents of the area. However, critics argue that it constitutes a form of collective punishment, which is illegal under international law. The Palestinian Health Ministry has reported that over 200 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank since October 7, either by settlers or in clashes with the military. For post-war Gaza, differences grow over Palestinian leadership role. Wall Street Journal. Israel has said it doesn't want to govern Gaza once its offensive finishes, but instead wants the Palestinian Authority to do so. However, the Palestinian Authority is not seen as being up to the job, and no easy alternative has been found. The US and European countries agree that Palestinians should not be displaced from Gaza in the long term, nor should Israel reoccupy the area, nor should Hamas return in a way that threatens Israel. The US is pressing Israel to unfreeze the money it blocked after the Palestinian Authority's unity pact with Hamas in April, which led to the breakdown of peace talks with Israel. Meanwhile, some Israeli security officials have warned that a UN peacekeeping mission in Gaza is unlikely to work, as the UN has proved to be ineffective as Hezbollah and Palestinian militias have regularly exchanged fire with Israel. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the six-dimensional world, here to bring you the latest news from our beloved planet. Today, we discussed a range of topics, from China hosting talks with Arab and Islamic countries to the escalating tensions between Israel and Iran. We also delved into the dire situation at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza, the larger context of the Israeli-led war on terror, and the struggles faced by the U.S. in deterring attacks on its troops. Additionally, we touched on the evacuation of premature babies from Gaza, the controversial Palestinian chant from the river to the sea, the breakdown of communication between Israel and Hamas, the lockdown in the West Bank, and the challenges of post-war leadership in Gaza. Now, let's dive into the analysis. China's involvement in the Israel-Palestine conflict is a significant development. With its strong stance on an independent Palestine, China is positioning itself as a mediator and advocate for peace in the region. This move not only showcases China's diplomatic prowess but also highlights its growing influence on the global stage. As tensions between Israel and Iran continue to rise, the possibility of the conflict spreading across the Middle East becomes a real concern. The US and Iran are both wary of further escalation, but the danger of a wider conflict looms as each side seeks to maintain its position. Iran's strategic maneuvering, aimed at weakening the American position in the region, could have grave consequences for stability in the area. The dire situation at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza is a heartbreaking reminder of the toll that the conflict has taken on innocent civilians. The UN's description of the hospital as a death zone paints a grim picture of the conditions faced by patients and healthcare workers. The Israeli military's denial of ordering the hospital's evacuation adds another layer of complexity to the situation. Regardless of the specifics, it is clear that immediate action is needed to ensure the safety and well-being of those inside the hospital. The analysis of the Israeli-led war on terror brings to light the broader motivations behind Israel's actions. The author argues that Israel's military actions are not solely driven by revenge but also by a desire to expand its arms industry and export its military and intelligence tools. This perspective sheds light on the complex web of factors that contribute to the ongoing conflict. The struggles faced by the U.S. in deterring attacks on its troops highlight the delicate balance it must strike in responding to provocations. With daily attacks in Syria and Iraq, the U.S. is walking a tightrope, trying to deter further aggression without inciting a wider conflict. This situation underscores the challenges faced by the U.S. in maintaining its military presence in the region. The evacuation of premature babies from Al-Shifa hospital highlights the urgent need for humanitarian assistance in Gaza. The dire shortage of essential supplies and the shutdown of crucial medical equipment paint a grim picture of the humanitarian crisis unfolding in the region. The World Health Organization's assistance in the evacuation is a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The controversy surrounding the Palestinian chant from the river to the sea reflects the deep divisions and conflicting interpretations that surround the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The ban on the slogan by the German Interior Ministry, as well as similar controversies in other countries, highlights the contentious nature of the issue. The debate over the slogan's meaning and implications underscores the deep-rooted complexities of the conflict. The breakdown of communication between Israel and Hamas, as exemplified by the falling out between Gershon Baskin and Ghazi Hamad, represents a setback in the search for a resolution to the conflict. The increasing entrenched positions of both sides make finding common ground increasingly difficult. The lockdown in the West Bank, particularly in Hebron, raises concerns about the violation of human rights and collective punishment. Critics argue that such measures constitute a breach of international law and further exacerbate tensions in the region. The situation highlights the need for a balanced approach that prioritizes security without infringing on the rights of the Palestinian population. Lastly, the challenges of post-war leadership in Gaza present a complex dilemma. While Israel does not want to govern Gaza, the Palestinian Authority is seen as ill-equipped for the task. Finding a viable solution that ensures the long-term stability of the region is a daunting task. In conclusion, the news today highlights the multifaceted nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the challenges faced by all parties involved. It is clear that a comprehensive and sustainable solution is urgently needed to bring an end to the suffering and violence. As always, I encourage you, our esteemed audience, to share your thoughts and participate in the discussion. What are your thoughts on these developments? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6 do brief via email.